Hey guys, welcome back to Claydesk. My name is Syed, and today I'm going to be talking about why do you need no coding whatsoever if you're pursuing AWS Certified Solutions Architect certification or just getting into the AWS Cloud Computing Platform. Many students have asked me this question, and first off, they're really adamant in getting into AWS or any cloud computing platform because they think everything requires programming. Well, I'm going to answer this why no coding, no programming skills are required if you need to get into the AWS cloud platform. So make sure you watch this video to the end because this is going to be important within your learning or your career journey. All right, so Amazon Web Services is a cloud computing platform, very popular, exponentially growing with enterprise companies where they require certified engineers or you need to have skills, right? But when it comes to working with AWS, a question that really comes immediately to many people, right, is will I need to code to use AWS? And here is the answer. But with this answer, I'm going to be explaining why is it not necessary and how much do you actually need coding, right? Well, you don't, right? But the simple answer is, does AWS require coding? Simple question. The answer is no. All right, so you don't need any coding skills to get started with AWS Cloud Computing Platform, right? So getting started and learning AWS does not require any coding skills to begin with. So do not be afraid, just dive right in, start with the hands-on, read some concepts, make sure you have the concepts pinned down, and then of course you apply those concepts by just creating a free AWS tier account and just following some of these hands-on exercises or projects, right? And of course, all these full courses are right here on YouTube. So go check them out and start learning. So you don't need coding, right? Well, what do you actually need? Well, many basic tasks in AWS, for example, can be performed without coding at all. But typically when we think about coding, right, or programming, we think about development. We talk about software development. We talk about full-fledged app development or website development. Well, none of this actually happens in AWS. All right. So depending on your job, your skills that you have or you would need within your job, you may still require a little bit of fundamentals of coding. Well, I shouldn't say coding, right? It's more of scripting. Now, there's a difference because as a solutions architect, for example, or a DevOps engineer, you need to be able to automate some tasks, right? As you start your learning journey or you're working with certain areas or certain services within AWS, you need to be able to automate some of these areas, right? And that kind of makes sense because it doesn't matter what job you are, right? Automation is key. Whether you're an assembly line, whether it's in the factory, right, physical work, they still want to be able to automate. Like look at Amazon, right? They have robots now, doing all these sorting and whatnot, right? So the idea is automation. So with automation, you need to have a little bit of scripting knowledge, shell script or bash. And again, this is not really hard at all, okay? This is different from actual coding or web programming or knowledge of object-oriented concepts and whatnot. So scripts are just a few lines of code, just basic things, which you can actually learn as you're learning, getting into AWS Cloud Platform, right? But you don't require any coding skills to get started and actually go beyond, even get certified without any coding skills, and which is pretty cool because many students just do not jump into AWS thinking that, hey, I need some coding, right? But of course, like I mentioned earlier, certain circumstances working within AWS will require some scripting. And again, that is only when you're actually going beyond your fundamental skills, right? You're actually at a medium to expert level. That's when you would be learning some scripting, how to automate things. And by that time, you'll be tech savvy anyways. You'll be, pretty good at the AWS Cloud Platform anyways, right? All right, so it's common for newcomers or people getting into AWS, don't create their AWS infrastructure via code, right? So you don't, create you actually use the interface. You use the GUI interface, right? Graphical user interface, by logging into the AWS Cloud Platform and using your mouse, and you're clicking on the resources and you're learning, which is perfectly fine. That's where you start. That's how you get in. So again, no coding, right? It's just configuring things, learning things, understanding how services work together. For example, if you're creating Route 53 or creating subnet, so you have some basic knowledge of networking and infrastructure anyways, right? So there's no code associated at all. Like I mentioned earlier, only when you actually start to work with and start to learn more and more, that's when you would get into code, right? So not to worry. So manually creating things in AWS is certainly possible. You can create a full-fledged, you can host a website on AWS by just using the GUI interface. You don't need any code. You can spin up, clusters in AWS. You can do anything in AWS without using code. Okay. Now the difference is the fact that once you're actually doing things manually, right? I should say manually because you're using the mouse and you're using, the GUI interface, is the fact that it's going to take you longer. Which is I recommend all my students, because this is where especially when you're a beginner, that's where you would need to be more focused on. You need to spend some time understanding the entire processes, and after a few months or whatever, depending on your pace, once you get to the automation part, boom, that's really exciting, because that's when you're actually learning a little bit of scripting and you're trying to automate these services, connecting to services, for example, based on the solution that you're delivering to your clients or working on a certain projects. So companies that create cloud infrastructure manually, it's generally not advised, of course, because as you grow, you need to have things automated, right? And it's considered an industry, not a good practice, right? But if you're a beginner, that's where you start anyways, right? You don't jump directly into trying to figure out how to automate or the DevOps pipeline and whatnot, right? So many benefits, of course, there are associated with automation. And like I said, it's operational efficiency. You do things quickly, efficiently, and bug-free. And that makes sense, but that's not where you start, all right? You start manually without any coding or programming skills at all. So let me give you an example. So let's say you like to use just code, for example, to run the entire AWS infrastructure. Well, there's a third-party tool called Terraform, or it's excellent, very powerful, and the industry uses it all the time. Now, Terraform uses infrastructure as a code, right? You actually code and then spin up your AWS resources right from Terraform. It not only allows AWS, but you can actually connect GCP or Microsoft Azure resources as well. So it's a very powerful platform, Terraform, that people use, but only, again, when you're an expert or you're at least at a medium level of your skill knowledge. And that's when you're actually moving away from the GUI interface and then actually getting into hands-on, actually how to automate and how to be more efficient, right? Because as a certified solutions architect or a certified DevOps engineer, you eventually would like to get to that point anyways, right, in your learning journey. So tech, like I mentioned earlier, watch out my other videos. It's always constantly learning. Even myself, I'm always learning new technologies, new third-party tools, always researching how to automate certain tasks, right? So that the benefit can be delivered to my clients or the company that you're working for. So infrastructure is code, but that's a later stage. At this point, you don't need any coding at all. All right, so what if you're unable to code? And that's perfectly fine, because we start and some people are naturally dive into programming or development, but there are others who are saying, well, geez, this is really difficult, right? So AWS, of course, is known to be the strongest and most dependable cloud platform and very easy to use, that offers a good number of features and services, of course, to help companies maintain their infrastructure and applications, right? Now, coding is not always required when you work with AWS. AWS can be processed in two ways. Manually, like I mentioned, you can use the GUI interface, or programmatically, right? We can also use the SDKs, CDKs, and then of course run automation that way as well. So those of you who cannot process AWS with code can of course work through a graphical user interface, right? Now, many courses that I have here on YouTube, full courses, they do both things. So they walk you through the GUI interface, right, step by step, and that's the first basic where you start. And then of course the advanced course is where you're actually learning how to do things programmatically, right? And that's perfectly fine. So again, you don't need to code or learn to code to get into AWS, right? That's right off the bat. So I hope this helps. I've explained why no coding is required and where coding is required, or scripting, I should say, is required as you move along within your learning journey. I hope this helps. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. My name is Syed. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.